Call me Guy Fawkes because we're here with some more bangers. Let's get it on to the next game. Burning Core versus CGA. Shout out to the English people if you know. If you know, if you don't, then you don't. It is what it is. Moving on. Let's get into this one. Burning Core versus CGA. We've got Middle Court. We're going to be joined by Echo KO later, so we'll get some post-game reviews on that one. But Middle Court, you are a CGA fan, and you got to be. I guess for most teams, you'd be like, well, you must be pretty happy. They took Sengoku to a pretty close game, but it's CGA. So we don't know who's going to turn up today. It could be the team that almost beat Sengoku. It could be the teams that lose to Axis.
It could be the team that threw a 5k gold lead versus Sengoku. Cheryl, every time I come on this desk and you try and talk to me about Crest Gaming Act, I have to say the same bloody thing every time. I don't understand this team. Anyone that claims to understand this team is lying through their teeth. And they have been consistently inconsistent once again this split. The highs from this team are ridiculous, but the lows are very, very disappointing. So much of the carry burden has been on hybrid this split, on stuff like the Civet, on stuff like the Aphelios, stuff like the Jinx, and it's worked a few times, but crucially, CJ haven't been able to get it over the line as many times as they would have liked.
And yeah, I'm just really happy to hear that CJ are exactly the same as Spring. I'm excited personally to see how Cocoon performs compared to Kaito. I wasn't Kaito's biggest fan, I'll be honest. And hearing that we have somebody playing meta now, it's pretty cool. I'm a big fan. So looking very favorably towards today's games from CGA.
Yeah, and talking about meta, you know what? Let's just jump straight into it. I want to talk about Flawless because I feel like Flawless in Spring was basically, to me at least, an AP carry jungler. You know, he played things like the Karthus, he played the Diana, he looked pretty strong on those. I feel like, okay, you know what, that was his thing. We had those question marks about, okay, he needs to scale. If he gets attacked early on, maybe he's going to lose the game. But this split, I feel like he's taken his identity, thrown it out of the window, and then brought in this new Flawless that is not performing as well.
I think maybe it's just a tendency to play one champion so you have some kind of default base of your team. And we've actually seen this repeatedly in the LJL. So Gnar obviously is the big one, but from DFM, for example, Poppy was a default pick for them. Yeah. They picked all the time. They were super happy to just default lock in that for steal and be like, okay, that's it. We know exactly what this champion likes to offer. They did this as also in Spring. Like the Diana and the Karthus were very stable picks for them, even though they are inconsistent by nature. That consistency of inconsistency was really, really important. It seems like they're trying to replicate that. I'm not as big of a fan as Trundle Blind and Trundle R5 and the default on this champion. So yeah, I'm going to be really excited when that champion gets locked in, and I have to talk about the strength of subjugation as a spell.
Yeah, I think for Burning Core, they have started to try and move away from that Trundle in recent weeks, picking up stuff like the Kindred and the Morgana, which I think fit a bit more into Flawless stylistically as a player. But to a certain extent, I kind of want Burning Core to throw stability to the wind a little bit. This team looks really, really good when they're just hands checking you because they've got really, really good hands. Ray Farkey. Yeah. I think still someone that you can make an argument being one of the top laners in the league, which considering that Burning Core, technically 7th place right now, is honestly kind of ridiculous. And DICE has that ability as well. So this team is so strange. And I think that matching up against CGA, it's going to be an incredibly weird game. And I'm not sure if I'm okay with how weird it's going to be.
But what I will say, though, is this is like a classic, you know? This is like the El Clasico
you're
of the
so
mid-table
right.
of the LJL. Like name a more classic duo than CGA versus Burning Core. I feel like it's an absolute banger, and it's a sentiment where these teams are basically going to decide who is taking that 5th spot, who is taking that 6th spot. And it is a big deal. Like, this is the end of the split almost. We only have 6 more games, including this one. And for both of these teams, they are really, really scrapping out to make sure that they are not going to be the ones left out of playoffs. And with that being said, I want to talk about the bot lane really quickly, because I feel like bot lane of Burning Core is the one that we talk about the most in terms of maybe not performing as much. I want to talk about picks specifically. We've seen them play some Draven and stuff. Oak, is there anything that you particularly want Yuhi to go back to that could give them the edge against CGA?
I mean, the Aphelios, probably. 12.11 saw a small bust to Aphelios, whilst it's still definitely not the strongest AD in isolation. I guess I'll say statistically, it's a big takeaway from Hybrid. And that has a lot of value in my eyes. Combine that with Lisa coming in with this Nautilus, that lane can be so pivotal for finding early skirmishes around Drake. And I feel like Aphelios Nautilus just really locks you into an easy win condition. It's get soul. And whilst that is potentially flipping it, because we haven't seen Drake buffs come in yet on 12.13, so people are still less eager to pick those up. It's still a really good win con and very easy to play through, because once Moonlight Vigil hits level 11, combine that with Depth Charge, you have an onslaught of ranged, non-committal teamfight starting tools, which I think is something that could, we talked about consistency, would definitely get them a helping hand.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing for me, is that Yuhi doesn't have to be the carry for Burning Core. Give him something that he can be consistent on. Give him something that you don't have to play towards, that isn't going to fall massively out of relevance if it doesn't get enabled. Draven. Just give him something that he can survive on, that he can get to 3 items on, and even if he's mispositioning slightly in teamfights, you can still hit high DPM numbers just with basic AD carry play if you're enabled.
Yeah, talking about high damage numbers, AD carries. Hybrid is on the other side of the rift to Yuhi, and to be honest, has been absolutely popping off recently against Sengoku. Really had a massive game. All split has looked super strong. Middlecop,
I mean, last split as well.
Yeah, I mean, last split as well. I mean, ever since this guy joined the league, I was really, really excited for them. You don't hit like top 15, top 20 challenger in career without being an completely cracked mechanical mastermind. And that's really what we've seen from Hybrid so far in this split. Occasionally going a little bit too far forward, but if you get him accelerated on a hyper carry, then he will win the game for you.
Yeah, and he's doing 34% of their damage on average.
That's
so...
probably too much. That's probably too much. If my AD carry is doing that much damage, I kind of want to poke my solo laners and go, yeah, could you contribute a little bit more, please?
Yeah, that really is actually probably maybe a testament to how Kaito has been, because in Spring Split, it was exactly the same thing. When we came into playoffs, me and Middlecop were prepping for CJ, and we were like, oh, he has the highest CS number of all AD carries and the second or third highest DPS, being only beaten out by Soul and Utapon. Like, this is the top 2 AD carries of Spring Split. So it is crazy to see him continuing that now. And I think Middlecop said something earlier. We'll see if he repeats it again about Hybrid, but I'm definitely a fan. I'll say that.
No, indeed. And I also want to look at the top lane. We've already talked about Ray Farkey a little bit, how he is such a prominent position for Burning Core. But I feel like we can't forget about Nap, I feel like Nap started off this split amazingly, had those crazy games. He picked out Olaf and really popped off. And I feel like I haven't really seen that from him before. We talked about wanting him to play carries before. He played a Gangplank game after we said that and popped off. Do you feel like this is kind of where CGA need to put him on the map? Do you need to put him on those more aggressive picks? Or do you say, you know what, you've actually been performing pretty well on tanks as well?
I think that... Yeah, well, I think you can kind of go multiple directions with Nap, because like so many top laners in the LJL, he can play multiple styles. I actually prefer him on scaling late game carries that you don't have to pay attention to. Stuff like the Gwen and the GP, I think he looks absolutely phenomenal on. This guy's always been an incredible team fighter. His laning is the thing that has really left a little bit to be desired. But if you can keep that top lane matchup isolated, I don't think that Ray Farkey is likely going to be on a pick that can pressurize Nap in the early stages. And once you get to 3 items on a Gwen and on a GP, you could do some pretty disgusting things.
Personally, I came into my prep today and I was surprised I hadn't seen more Ornn and more Sejuani. I think these champions are the figureheads of stability in top lane at the moment, and this is something I really want to see them aim towards.
Well, you might get some Ornn, you might get Sejuani. We're actually going into this. We're getting into draft. I want you guys to shout out what your predictions are when you get there straight away. But going into this one, let's get into game 2. CGA versus Burning Core. Who will close the door? Who needs to win more?
The rhymes never end, man.
They don't. Oh, hello, Jaeger. Hello, Recruit. How are you guys doing?
It's nice to see them.
They're top lads. They're top lads. They really, really are. I'm pretty sure I've got the same headset as them. It's quite nice.
Wow, that's a flex.
Yeah.
We were going to be heading into draft, and now we're not. Just give us a moment. We'll
now
be
we
back
can
in.
do our predictions.
That's true.
Yeah,
we
that's
can.
True. So I think looking at this, purely despite Echo, I'm going to go CGA win. I think that Burning Core's inconsistencies are around the top half of the map where they need to be strong have kind of hampered their ability to really get snowballing. And I think that Nap and Cocoon offer just enough stability that Hybrid is going to get to a point where he can really take over the game.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you actually. I know normally casters like to head, but I feel like CGA on a good day very easily beat Burning Core.
No.
I feel, and I'm a very big fan of that. So Caster's Curse coming in full effect. I'm very excited to see CGA win this game because it's basically confirmed at this point. We both predicted it, which means there's no way CGA throw a 5k gold lead.
Oh, why did you have to bring that up, man? That just wasn't necessary. It just was
Anyway.
really that's ruined my Friday morning.
If Burning Core are going to find a win, I feel like it's almost entirely going to be through Flawless playing something other than Trundle and Ray Farkey being on point. And whilst we've seen him default to the GP, a lot of Sejuani gameplay in there, and I'm actually I'm a very big fan of Sejuani and meta at the moment. I don't know what it is with me trying to shoehorn tanks into top lane, but I think this champion looks oh so strong at the moment. And in the hands of Ray Farkey, who had a monstrous Gragas in Spring Split, I think this champion performs very similarly, like a unreal wave clear tank with a lot of solo kill pressure around that level 9 point. Boy, am I in for that! So very much eager to see that coming in.
And the thing is as well about Sejuani is that she offers such good setup for your jungler as well, because you can stack up that stone with all the melee auto attacks and lock that person down. It's less about Sejuani grabbing the kills, but if you can get those onto Flawless and he is playing a champion that can carry in the later stages of the game, that could be a winning strategy for Burning Core.
Just stay away from bot side. Let Yuhi and Loser hit 3 items as slowly as possible, which is interesting actually, because you already talked about actually we want Nap to kind of do the same thing in parallel, and it's not because he's a bad player, it's just that because his default right now has been, well, I mean, the default for basically every top laner, which has been Gwen and GP. The Gwen seeing a little bit less priority now after repeated nerfs in spring, but still top 3 in top lane at the moment. And they both perform relatively the same. A little bit of early game play in terms of solo pressure, but ultimately we're waiting for those 2 items, those 3 items to really kick in.
Yeah, and once you get those online, you are going to be a disgusting carry. Apologies about the pause, a little delay getting into Champion Select. One of the unfortunate things about being a bootleg broadcast is these things can happen, and we don't actually know what's going on, folks. So,
I think I said it earlier, but I think actual information is completely overrated. I think you should formate all your opinions on personal experiences, which is once again why I'm such a huge peddler of Sejuani top, as well as other picks within the mid lane, like Victor, which was statistically maybe not the best champions at the moment. I personally feel like they're better.
I statistically as well, Victor was in Arcane.
And was Jinx as well. Maybe we're going to see. Maybe we see an Arcane comp today.
Lord, I remember in spring. I remember in spring, like there was a solid 2-week period where Victor and Jinx were hyper meta, and all you could talk about on cast is, oh, bad chest, it's found it from Arcane.
Spoilers. Excuse me.
Oh, come on.
It's like 7 months ago.
It's been 7 months. Oh, my.
It's been 7 years.
Oh, Lord. Arcane was such a weird time in the League community because everyone was getting really, really hyped to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and watch. Arcane premiere. At least here in the UK. But we're going to be jumping back into game. Batchest, is that Victor from Arcane on the ban table?
Oh my god, it is. And that's really on point for Cocoon, who actually had pretty good performance on the Victor. It's a player that's, come in replacing Kaito, and Kaito being very much an Ahri Zoe player. We also saw LeBlanc from them in spring, and now that Cocoon's come in and he plays a little bit more meta, we get to see, hey, look at that. mid lane meta bans coming in. Fantastic. CGA in return doing a couple of defaults, but also specifically the Silas is actually more of a target towards the style of draft that Burning Core like to get in. They are one of these teams more orientated towards that counter pick within the mid lane, and that's why the Ari goes as well. Get rid of that staple. It's a lot of disruption towards Dice, who's been at core a stability point for Flawless to play through.
Yeah, and it feels so strange jumping into a champion select with Hybrid on one of these teams and no AD carry bans off
nothing.
the board. I think that's a real testament to what Cocoon has sort of brought to CGA. He's brought a little bit more of a threat in the mid lane, but with Kalista going unbanned, first pick for Burning Core.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a testament to Cocoon or if anything actually a flub from CJ. I feel like a lot of these AD carry bans actually do need to come from red side, and so suddenly we see immediately Kalista locked in. Now this does give the space for the other two, which have seen a lot of pressure within the LJL. That of course being the well, doesn't matter anyway. Aphelios gets immediately locked in. I don't know why I was even going to talk about it. I should have known. I said it in draft.
Zeri Illusion, yeah, not really favored picks. The Aphelios are going to be here for Hybrid, one of his favorite champions. And the Wukong for Kassin, a champion that not only strong in the meta, but something that individually he's really looked comfortable on.
Yeah, and we've seen this handshake a lot, right? The Wukong gets locked in, and then we get to see the Viego either locked in next, or potentially if the Viego gets banned in second rotations of bans, we might see Poppy if that doesn't also get taken away. I think the big thing here is, I should have said it earlier, but this Nautilus definitely going to get taken away. Nemo's default for this split so far, and also very, very good paired up with the Aphelios and very strong with the Kalista too. So a bit of a takeaway, and ooh, that's not Trundle.
That is not Trundle. It's also not something that Ray Farkey has played either. We are typically seeing this Shyvana in the top side, although definitely does exist as a jungler, and I wouldn't be surprised if Flawless could pull out some full AP shenanigans as CGA locking in that Tom Kench for Emma, trying to get a bit more safety for Hybrid.
Yeah, there was so especially with Red Smite being such a hot topic at the moment, there was a build at the start of this split where Shyvana would go into the tank item into demonic embrace. No, is that the item?
Yeah, I believe that's the name
with
of the item.
HP. Yeah, demonic embrace, and you would go Red Smite with a Sunfire or a Frostfire, and you would burn people down with auto attacks and spell casts. Basically, the top lane build's been a little bit different. We normally see the Bork or just full tank basically, or Bork into tank. Both being very, very strong. So it does give him a little bit of flexibility for Burning Core, especially before Red Smite has been nerfed to 12.14.
Yeah, and there's going to be no potential for a B5 Trundle as CGA taking away the Puppy and the Troll in this second phase of bans. And once again, Burning Core really focusing out this mid lane. That is another ban with this Orianna that Cocoon has played so far. This Lissandra too. I believe that actually every single champion that Cocoon has played this split has been banned. So we're going to need to see something new from the CGA mid laner.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the counter pick comes from CGA. If they want to lock in the mid lane early now that so many picks have come in, and maybe lock in the rest of Cocoon's pool, if they're really okay with going, you know what, I'm okay with, how many is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mid lane, 7 mid lane bans coming through. After another pick gets locked in, I'm still okay to counter pick that. And it's a very scary position to be in now because they have locked in that Narb, which means that CGA are still going for counter pick within mid. But how many champions are left? How many counter picks are left to the potential core key that's probably going to get defaulted to by Burning Core? Okay, sorry, it's Dice. Why would I say that?
Yeah, of course it's not going to be Corky. Of course it's just going to be the Akali slam down blind into that mid lane. And with the GP locked in, we are getting Jungle Shyvana.
God bless. And we'll talk more about this pick when it gets slotted in, and also what kind of itemization we can see it leaning towards. Focus right now is that triple carry comp coming once in again for Burning Core, something we saw last game and actually saw piloted very well with Rascal Jester. The pool has been limited in mid lane so much, but there are a few key picks left. We see the Swain being hovered now, something actually very strong matchup into the Akali, especially now that his E got changed. That never move can actually still toggle, get the passive kicking if he lands it on the Akali now in Shroud, which was a very annoying issue with this specific matchup before. On top of that, this champion, a fantastic bruiser, drain, tank, mage, AoE,
Something,
team
I don't
fighting,
know.
support. This champion I am a huge fan of this champion. Even after nerfs that I saw in 12.12, I think this champion slotted in with this kind of a comp specifically works so well, because look at the disruption coming in for CGA. Look at the myriad of engage tools and teamfight extension tools combined with that Moonlight Vigil for easy pseudo engage. This myriad of team fighting tools to slow and cause chaos works oh so well with Swain, because he's only got to be draining one target to start proccing that demonic flare. And that in turn can be very scary for carries to then put damage threat on him, because he can very easily go never move, demonic flare, the red lightning hand, and just demolish somebody. So yeah,
you should just call it like "You must die," like Palpatine or something. Machine lightning.
No, what is it? Unlimited power. They actually, to be fair, now think about this though. They had the Yi skin already. There is an opportunity for so many different, almost Star Wars, but not white, because not quite, because you don't want to hit copyright skins. That could maybe be the next thing we see come in.
But the thing is, I felt like League did a load of those in sort of like the early days. Like you had like the Star Wars skins, you had like the browser ones as well. I think they're quite funny. Like you've got like, is it like Firefox, Ari, you've got Chrome, Ramus, stuff like that. And you're like, okay, this is kind of how a skin line works. But I think that the next Scar Guardian skin is a little bit more likely for Swain than anything Star Wars themed. But we are jumping onto the Rift now. Burning Core facing off against CGA. Two teams bottom half of the standings at risk of actually falling out of playoffs. So a win here, crucial for both of them.
Indeed, and that's been entirely off the back of other teams getting significantly better. Not just Hawks, I think Sengoku and DFM have also somehow tightened the ship further, which is incredible to see from this kind of a smaller region in the first place. And CJ instead and Burning Core both remaining relatively the same. And that's why we've seen them drop the ladder just a little bit, just like one spot each, right? Because they were contesting 5th and 6th last split. Or 4th and 5th, and now it's 5th and 6th.
And now 5th and 6th. It's a little bit where they wouldn't want to be. But
a bit tricky.
I think an interesting thing to note here is what we're seeing in terms of the summoner spell choices and the rune setup from Flawless, because it is the Ghost, it is the Press the Attack. This is implying a Shyvana that wants to get up close and personal, that wants to be tussling in melee range with CJ. And I feel like that really fits into the identity that CGA actually want to be playing out. You want champions to be in melee range of Cocoon, because that just enables the Swain to drain tank even more. Yeah,
indeed. Going to be seeing how actually the Shyvana gets piloted in tandem with Loser, because whilst we talked about, hey, look at all the extension tools that CJ have, depth charge onto hybrid, remember the core carrying of CJ combined with Flawless, who's going to be with the Pressy attack. There's still a multitude of builds, but definitely going to be more damage orientated. With that Dragon's Ascension, I think that's what it's called, we're going to be seeing how quickly they can get onto hybrid, and if Yuhi and Tandem can find the damage to pick off that player quickly, because even with all the teamfight extension tools, if hybrid dies at the start of the fight, it very quickly goes for Burning Core.
Yeah, I mean, the Swain, the Wukong, the Na, these are champions that can provide damage, but I wouldn't call them like pure damage carries, if you know what I mean. They buy a lot of time in team fights, and they are contributing to making that go a little bit longer, like you're already talking to. But once again, hybrid is the linchpin for CJ, and he's having to match up against a bot lane that can play very aggressive from Yuhi and Loser.
Yeah, I think we need to see actually Yuhi and Loser find at minimum pretty sizable CS lead, because they have all of the priority in this lane. That's actually really good that they managed to slot in Shyvana this early as well, though, because Shyvana, one of the best benefits from that 6-minute Drake coming in almost immediately. And look at the bot lane he has to set that up, as a lot of trading comes in. And yeah, this is really, you can see here the Kalista lane showing its head already.
Yeah, this is why this champion is pretty much permaban. The amount of pressure they can put out in the early stages is honestly ridiculous. And then when you get to team fights, obviously you've got the ability to dash around with the martial poise. But I think the key thing is the Fate's Call as your ultimate. It gives you another engaged children. When you've got a Nautilus already, more CC is going to make you very happy.
Indeed. And get to Pantor's top side. And this is fantastic. I wanted to talk about this matchup real quick, because this matchup depending on who's got the wave shove is going to dictate how each player is CSing and who has the strength in the matchup. It's all about wave control, because both top laners can take control of the wave, and once that begins, it becomes very easy to snowball that and push these waves towards turret and try and equalize CS that way. And Rayfucky actually coming out net even in CS and pretty healthy as well because of that. But that leaves him vulnerable to Kassin. Didn't find the time at this time. Now this wave is slow pushing back in. It gives Nat the opportunity to bully out a little bit more, but Flawless has made his way towards top side now as well. And that's going to be the back and forth constantly of pressure within this top side. I'm going to see which top laner or which jungler even decides, if at all, if they want to punish these two players.
Yeah, Flawless did actually just see that ward that CGA had placed in his topside jungle die, but I'm not sure if he was actually spotted on it themselves. So, information inequality generated in favor of Burning Core. We're bringing back terminology that we haven't heard in a little bit of a while. In the early stage of the game, doing well. All lanes going relatively even thus far, and that's good for both these teams, but in different ways.
Yeah, I would say better for CGA, but I don't think Burning Core really got online yet. There is a very scary level 9 spike on 3 players from Burning Core, and I don't think the same can really be said from CGA. You get a lot more consistency in wave clear coming out from CGA once they get access to the safety net of Gnar as well as Swain being level 9, but the pure damage coming out from all 3 carries from Burning Core is so scary. And I think that means that Infernal Drake being the first Drake of the game, Burning Core trying to set up a slow push, now they have their eyes immediately set towards this.
Yeah, Dice ticking over to level 6 as well, and already completed that Leeching Leer on this Akali. So going to be surviving a little bit longer in these fights with the Conqueror as well. Actually can tussle fairly well.
Swain items.
Vandal Glass Mirror. Okay, we're seeing an Imperial Mandate going to be coming out. Means that Cocoon probably isn't in a position where he can really contest for this Drake, although level 6 may feel able to. Dice is going forward now onto the Swain. Kassin is here to back up his mid laner, but without the Cyclone on the Wukong, doesn't want to dive too far forward. It's actually CGA who've been able to pick up this play, and with no ultimate for the Swain, Burning Core feel able to go forward. So much time being bought in the front line by Nemba, but he is going to get Shuriken flipped up by Dice, who secures first blood. But now CGA feel free to go forward. The health bars on Burning Core not as high as they would like. His hybrid 1v1 the Akali on the backside should be able to win out on that fight eventually with the red and white guns. The DPS is pretty significant, although actually Dice turns it around with a flip at the end. 2 kills for the Burning Core mid laner and the Dragon to boot.
God, I hope we get a replay on that, because there were so many different factors which lead to that successful fight from Burning Core, and really exciting to see actually how Burning Core handled that fight, because that was ultimately what led to that success. Well, of course it is, but specific reasons why, and we do get to see the replay, so I'm going to highlight 3 things, G. First of all, Cocoon, number 1, immediately has to burn this Demonic Ascent right at the start of the fight, and you can see here how strong it is in this thing. Even with the Bandle Glass, he's having to burn that. Means, look, they get to immediately chunk him out, they drop the Ignite, and for a second here, it's really good for CGA. They burn so much effective HP out of Burning Core, and even after that kill gets found, we still feel like that Burning Core are playing from deficit, right? But look at the Drake and look at Hybrid here. So number 1, Dice handles this fight to perfection, playing around each tool, trying to use the bush as well to get vision, and then just, I mean, it's just Akali things here. Whilst this is happening towards this bot side, the CGA were tanking that Infernal Drake the entire time. They were trying to look to get onto Flawless. That reduces that HP so much that Burning Core actually find the turnaround. They get to take the Drake. Immaculate.
Exceptional stuff in the early game, and you're getting your carries that you kind of need to be accelerated, which is going to feel absolutely amazing. It hasn't resulted in a massive gold lead in favor of Burning Core just yet, but I think crucially, that kill onto the backside of the fight went onto Nema. And the Tom Kench is going to be doing absolutely nothing with that gold. So the difference at the top of your screen, not significant, but that's lying to you a little bit.
Indeed. And now we get to see as well, even with that fight happening, is level 7 is online for 2 players. We've got level 5 as well. We're very much approaching the big spike coming out from Burning Core, and Herald now online as well, especially now that Flawless managed to pick up that first Drake. He's got those bonus resistances. this team comp is already very skirmishy by nature because they have multitude of doubles and triplets that they can play through to really ensure successful fights, especially with Cocoon opting towards the support build and almost immediately being punished by it. It means that whilst Kassin has eyes on this Herald, so does Flawless. And I think it's very scary for CGA to look to fight towards this Herald, but it's CGA. We know they're going to opt into it anyway.
Oh, Flawless diving forward there with the dragon form. Kassin can just hold himself. Wait, you're not going to miss that cooldown too much on Flawless because you can just go back into your jungle, do a little bit of farming and stack up that rage so you can cast the ult again, but doesn't seem content with that for now. He's just going to steal away a few range creeps in the mid lane. It's a little bit BM from
I think it's for wave prio, but
no,
I don't know how much it
no,
means.
No.
You sound like a salty mid laner, but I know you're a jungler as well. What is going on there?
No, I know my thought process if I did that in mid lane and it wasn't about pushing the wave at all.
Even with Flawless not being too unhappy to lose the ultimate, it is right on the timer for CJ, and they immediately look towards it. Oh, Dice has to burn the killer instinct. Nope.
Yeah, has to burn the Shuriken flip, but it does go a little bit wide. Nap can take out the barrel, and Burning Core showing a little bit of restraint. Backing away when they don't feel like they can take the priority of the fight, although Flawless could just walk up and steal away the Herald.
I mean,
Fair
Nap
play
has
to you, mate.
Mega.
And CJ, they're not really defending this one super hard. Nap is Mega now, but Rayfaki can force them back with the barrels. Burning Core, they're going to be able to pick up this Herald, and they may look for the fight as well. Crunching away, but in the early stages, Burning Core coming out on top.
That is... did he just walk up slowly and smite that? Incredible. Flawless managing to finesse himself. Brilliant. He managed to finesse himself a Herald right on timer for him to clear out his top side, get an enhanced recall in, and now immediately, once again, they look towards the spot side again, and hey, look at that. They didn't burn any ultimates other than that Rayfaki's ultimate there in that fight. And we know that both of these top laners are not going to be TPing down for this Drake anytime soon. Rayfaki, if anything, has had repeated priority on this wave, and it means that if anybody's going to get a reset in and move towards this Drake, it's going to be Rayfaki first.
Yeah, and that's great to hear, honestly, for a GP, because you do need a little bit more of that setup time with the barrels. You need to get yourself in position. Nah, another champion that I think is forced to play around objectives in a very, very specific way, obviously depending on the Mega Gnar timing. So getting that first rotate over is going to be very beneficial. We are starting to see items come through for both these teams. Flawless now going towards that Frostfire Gauntlet, and it is that Imperial mandate for Cocoon.
Yeah, a cheaper first item coming in, and that may help them secure a successful fight here, but it is that mandate, which means that fights need to be played a little bit slower from CJ, which, to be fair, is the name of the game for this kind of a comp. So now it's kind of seeing how Cocoon can navigate this fight individually to support his team, because the playstyle changes very much from this player. It's less trying to find that triple burst combo from that never move. It's more about playing these fights a little bit slower, trying to set up for hybrid to follow up on that Imperial mandate proc.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is that neither of these AD carries has completed a mythic just yet. So in terms of power level, pretty even. As far as that spent gold goes, the hook from Loser diving in, but he's immediately taken out. Pull back with a Fate's Call, but CJ have already wiped this fight. Dice diving into the backline as no one, and Burning Core has actually gone down. The Drake goes in favor of CJ, but Burning Core somehow escaped.
Wow, Kassin doing God's work there, finding that immediate first engage to put Burning Core directly on the back burner. It does secure them the Drake. No kills found, just a little bit lacking in damage there. I think Hybrid was only able to find that Moonlight Vigil a little bit late and wasn't really on the correct guns for it anyway. But nonetheless, that's a second Drake picked up on the side of CJ instead. And even with, we talked about it already, a little bit of gold deficit on the carries for this team, they still managed to find an objective.
That's great stuff, and that means that the Drake Soul timer doesn't really exist for Burning Core right now, and denying some extra power away from Flawless on the Shivano is not something that CGA are going to be complaining about.
Indeed. And now this Herald gets immediately popped. I was about to mention it. It was on quarter timer just before Flawless popped it just now. So that's a nice little 2 plates going in. I'm hoping Dice walks up as well, gets a nice tidy income of gold too. And this is a good default. We always see this Herald popped poor timings when it's about to blow out, especially because of how strong second Herald is now. I like to see it drop to mid lane almost immediately because Dice is never going to find that by himself, and damage on mid lane turret is always impactful.
And I think the thing is as well, it's gold onto an Akali.
Yep.
And even if that's one of those small little zombie wards where you kill it and it grants you 1 gold, you feel good about gold onto Akali because not quite at the mythic itemization yet, has made a little bit of a pit stop to pick up the Oblivion Orb, which is definitely necessary when you're playing against the likes of a Swain, but means that that Riftmaker is going to be a little bit later before it comes in.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm actually not a huge fan of the Oblivion Orb coming in. Dice trying to find a little trade in mid lane. I don't think it's going to amount to much. Whilst it's going to help a lot in side lane when that starts beginning, whilst Dice is locked into mid, I really wish you'd got access to that that mythic early on, especially because it's only 25% healing reduction now. Not as much value comes in from that 800 gold, and especially with the onslaught of champions that can build into it and proc it very widely and very easily. Maybe we would have wanted to see it come in a little bit later. Nonetheless, comes in and Flawless now. Look at the fight in his own jungle with Kassin. Don't think anything's going to happen really. And it is really this kind of a stalemate where both teams are relatively equal in power levels. And it's really the only player I'd want to see being maybe a little bit more aggressive is Yuhi. But even through this Nautilus Kalista lane, actually finding themselves in a very minor CS deficit.
And it's reminding me a lot of the Draven that we've seen from Yuhi in the past. It very much feels like Burning Core go to him, hey, here's a strong early game champion. It's going to be enough to get you through that laning phase versus these higher skill AD carries, but we're not really going to enable the pick too much. We're not really going to enable you too much. Rely on the utility that you can provide in team fights with this Kalista, and kind of just say that it's CGA looking at a bot lane dive here. They are going to be running into Flawless, who has that Dragon Force ready, and Kassin maybe a little bit caught out. The flash eat from Nema to keep his jungler alive, but with that tower falling down, CJ can go forward in this fight. Flawless already taken out, as that's a kill. That is a second kill. That is a third kill for CGA, and they make the play in the bot lane pan out for them beautifully.
Wow, and yeah, it comes off a multitude of factors there. Unlocking that bot lane turret was really the big thing to enable that dive. No other damage threat coming in. And then putting, once again, Burning Core on the back foot there. They immediately aggress, and it forces, especially because Loser's already been chunked out here, it forces that immediate Kalista ulti. So Loser can't play his role out here. And we're going to see exactly how that plays out, even with Kassin getting chunked very low here. Yeah, Nema just making sure this comes out, and even with Hybrid being threatened by Flawless, he pops the turret first. Just very smart and calm play from CGA, really secures him this fight.
Yeah, and it's that bot lane that Burning Core didn't play towards, that Burning Core didn't enable, now in a deficit even more, and it's CGA that have claimed the gold lead in this game. And once again, I want to look at Cocoon. A really good play here on the Swain, getting towards that Rylai's very quickly, and that 2-item spike is absolutely lethal.
Yeah, this is maybe my biggest criticism of Burning Core's drafting style, was the multitude of mid lane bans they threw towards. Mid lane isn't that kind of a role anymore. We don't see specific 2 or 3 champions hold strong sense in the meta. We're seeing a lot of defaults at the moment, obviously being that the Ahri, the Corki, the Azir really as the blinds, right? But even with something like the Akali coming in, can very aptly be handled by something holding less value in the meta. That's very clear, because I mean, we talk about the Swain specifically being a very strong presence with this kind of a comp as a whole.
Nema should be fine in mid lane. This Rift Herald not quite going to take out the tower, although it's going to chunk it very, very low. So if someone on Burning Core wants to go over and breathe on the mid lane tower, that would be absolutely excellent. But CJ able to trade it for the Hextech Drake, and now stacking 5 members. They're trying to take down the Burning Core mid lane tower, and they don't really have the wave clear to stand up against this Dice. Looking for something on the side of Kassin, going for the dive. The tower has fallen down, and CJ may get the fight as well. A massive engage from Nap, but it's actually Yuhi who claims the first kill of the fight. Another one for Cocoon, though, as CJ are now on the run. Dice is turned up, level 11 on the Akali, but an excellent flash from Nap gets him away for the time being. Eats it up now in the mini form, but Nemba with a clutch save onto his top laner means that CGA don't lose anyone else.
Oh, CGA playing that fight very cleanly once again. Now, it's going to be a mid lane turret in exchange for mid lane turret, and actually a 1-for-1, which means that gold lead remains relatively neutral, and actually both teams come out pretty even with that. But we're seeing the essence of how CGA wants to play really show its head, and that in turn leads to me really being very much in the favor of CGA in the stage of this early game, because this comp is only going to get stronger once that Riley gets picked up by the Swain. I think it's going to be the big item that we're going to be looking towards. And yeah, see how this fight gets handled. Once again, very calm in terms of how they handle this. Cocoon popping this ultimate early on as soon as this Shuriken flip lands onto Dice means Dice is locked out of this fight for such an extended period of time. The only big flub coming out from CGA is their very aggressive stance, even with this second turret still being available, is really what puts them on deficit here. But even throughout this fight, they're so calm with this. I think Nema, look at that. Look at the timing on that. And he's so chill with it as well.
Yeah, it's the second time.
I didn't know he was chill like that.
Yeah, it's very chill. Very chill. Very chill. Second time this game that we've seen a clutch eat like that, and I'm really happy that Nema is back in the squad, because Primo coming in looked all right for CGA, but it really was about Cocoon in terms of that duo of rookies that was popping off. And I think for CGA, this is probably the strongest roster that they're going to be able to put together for themselves, and going towards playoffs, definitely something that they're keeping their eye on. I think they're absolutely set up for success.
Indeed. Now we see Baron spawns now. Nobody really going to be looking towards that yet, but that does mean that the vision congestion towards topside always increases as soon as that objective spawns, no matter what, especially when you're against a Kalista, whilst Burning Core definitely won't be looking towards it anytime soon. That threat is ever present. In turn, this means that now that this mid lane turret's been unlocked, especially with Hybrid being oh so strong, CGA are going to have a lot of priority in this mid lane, and we want to see how they get to convert that into space in the map, potentially looking towards this top lane tier 1 as well, and try to increase that very minor gold lead that they currently hold. It's not even a gold lead, really.
Yeah, it's not really anything. But you do want to sort of do that sweep of the outer towers just so you can establish your vision lines a little bit further forward, because in 2 minutes' time, you've got a crack at Hextech Soul Point, which is going to feel absolutely disgusting when you've been able to stack these up a little bit more, and when you've already got champions that are going to benefit from that so much.
Did you know that the Hextech portals are actually made by Jace from Arcane?
Wait, Jace from Arcane?
Jace from Arcane, yeah. Big fan I am, actually.
From Arcane. CGA going to find Flawless here in the topside jungle. Nema is around here as well. They need to be careful, though, because members of Burning Core are starting to rotate over. But Kassin able to dash over the wall, get himself out of there just fine. And this is a game that's been very cagey. It's been very tepid a lot of times. But we saw in our first game of the day how a game that is looking a bit even can explode into action very, very quickly. Loser throwing out the hood, but not finding it. Cocoon popping that demonic ascension very, very early. That is a massive cooldown off the board.
I don't know if there's an opportunity for Burning Core to look towards this Baron, even with that ultimate being burnt, though. They've got eyes on it. They're going to walk out, clear some vision, even threaten it nonetheless. But Cocoon really playing on the edge there. I think he assumed he was going to get lollipopped by that hook there, and decided to see if he could buffer the ultimate through that to ensure he wouldn't get picked off. And in turn, that's an ultimate burn right before Hextech Drake number 2 is coming online. 25 seconds on that now, and Burning Core as well after that, and seeing all the resets in, they also get priority in this mid wave as well. So we've seen them play a little bit backwards in these team fights. Now that they're able to set up some initial vision around the Drake, I want to see if Yuhi can actually get his foot on the aggression, because 2 items kicks in now. On top of that, Dice obviously being that ever-threatening side lane, and he wants to get the flank off. Burning Core setting up this vision will enable him to do so, and could really disrupt CJ's plans.
Kassin going forward with the clone, finding another Cyclone onto 3 members of Burning Core. What a Moonlight Vigil from Hybrid, as down goes the Shyvana in the front line, and now the solo lanes from Burning Core are on the wrong side of the rift. Losers still hanging around, can fish with the hook. There is no smite available for CJ, but no smite for Burning Core either. They could look to play out this fight, although they may just get caught out. Rayfaki going a little bit too far forward as Dice exhausted as he dives into the backline. Once again, Nema saving his team with clutch defensive support play. A TP out coming through from Rayfaki, but Nat puts him to sleep.
Wow. Disgusting combo coming up from CGA, specifically that Moonlight Vigil. You highlighted it there, but so important to play on the shreds of Infernum, as well as that level 11 ultimate as well, was so impactful for starting that fight successfully. Now almost mega. Barnacle were looking towards it, but yeah.
He knows. And we know he knows.
Okay, we get the replay on it, and yeah, so we can highlight this. Kassin very on the foot forward, something we've seen from constant aggression. He loves to play like this, but the Infernum Moonlight Vigil, level 11 as well, absolutely deletes, and that's off the back of a very lucky crit, I would like to say, by the way, and pretty much secures in this fight. Even though we see Barnacle try to make the play in return, remember, Dice has yet to burn that ultimate. Doesn't really amount to much, and that's third Drake going over to CGA, and they have a very clear goal now that they're looking towards. I think this soul specifically is so potent and works so well with this kind of a comp as well, because they're going to get multiple procs off that in a fight, and that's going to lead so well to some of the more inconsistencies that this team comp has. And wow, yeah, you said it there. Nap puts Ray Farkey to sleep. What a testament.
Yeah, as Kassin once again going forward, finding a knockup with the Cyclone. Well, this fight is looking a little bit less advantageous for Crest Gaming Act. Already a kill for Dice, but he has burnt a lot to get it, and Hybrid is still alive. Loser diving forward, using the death charge as well as Cocoon with the ultimate, with the Rylai's, with the slows. There is no way that he can get out of this one. Flash forward with the lightning, and the Callista can hop as much as she likes, but jumps into the grave.
I wish I'd been able to highlight it in the last fight, because the last fight was when this Rylai's was online, but this is really the fight where it shows how strong this combination is. I think very smart from Cocoon to come in with the utility focus build, because it doesn't matter if he's done a support item first. That quicker spike into the Rylai's, into a potential Zhonya's third as well, that's all that matters here. And it really showed there against Yuhi, where he really wasn't able to play the game. And I came out of this expecting just another chill sesh, but Kassin wants to keep fighting, keep pushing this lead as much as possible. And even though he gets burned out here, I think the team are very on board to go, okay, Kassin's almost dead, time to follow up on his death and actually find something in exchange. And this is basically off the back of Dice being completely locked out of this fight.
Yeah, and look, it's Cocoon going forward. Finally, CGA have got a man in the mid lane that they can play around. 4-0-4 on the Swain. And I can't imagine there are going to be many people happier about this than Hybrid. It's not all on him anymore. There is a genuine threat coming out of the middle of the map for Crest Gaming Act, and he is looking very, very impressive.
Yeah, maybe Cocoon converts me into a CGA fan. I think his champ pool, Victor and Swain. I mean, he's got my favorite archetype in his pool. That's all I need to see. Yeah, very cool to see him playing so well. And that, as you mentioned, so important for CJ, because they've been missing this kind of asset in the mid lane. It showed very heavily in spring, because Kaito, especially in playoffs, got super restricted in his pool and taken down very, very swiftly in terms of, the other mid laners like Dice, who's, whilst Burning Core are sitting at the forefront of they're sitting at the same kind of cusp. Dice was definitely a more potent mid laner in terms of solo threat. Cocoon has managed to dismantle him very completely when a multitude of bans were thrown into him, and now once team fighting has started, has shown his strength very much so in this one.
Impressive stuff. Level 15. I wonder if he's going to be able to tick over to that level 16 mark. Unlocked
so important.
Fully upgraded Demonic Ascension right before this potential Hex Tech Soul. 3 items for Hybrid as well now. He's got that Infinity Edge on the AD carry, which means that this Aphelios is at a point where it's very, very difficult to fight against him. Although, one member on Burning Core I do want to highlight is Ray Farkey. 3 items on the GP, nearly level 16 himself. I think if there's going to be anyone to watch in the next team fight for the blue side team, it is the Pirate in the top lane.
Now, little bit skirmishing begins. We know that Kassin's not going to be able to look for this yet because Cocoon is not yet in position. Very smart from Cocoon actually to opt into a heal whilst his flash is down with that spellbook as well. Going to be really important to navigating through some of these fights. And remember, as soon as he gets onto Yuhi and that Rylai starts proccing, Yuhi is nowhere to go. He is reliant on other people to CC out Cocoon to get outside of the Demonic Ascension range. And we saw that show in last fight. We want to see it again. Vertical maybe take a bit more of identification on how they can get Yuhi through these extended fights.
Yeah, because needs to be pumping out that damage. Nap very, very close to going mega on the Gnar, and if he can find the engage, it would be absolutely massive for CGA. Flawless.
Burning
Being pulled
Core.
back in the front line as that soul already for CGA. Burning Core are late to the play, but they are going to be heading for an early grave. Kasim with the engagement, Yuhi is able to kite it out just in time. Nema once again saving Hybrid as Dice has nowhere to go. Another kill for Hybrid, and CGA look to put this game to bed.
Wow, CGA playing a tandem of fighting there. We have Hybrids and Nema in the bot side dealing with the delayed engage from DICE, and the rest of CGA are disrupting Flawless from stopping that Drake, and then again following up and forcing Yuhi and Loser once again to play backwards into a Swain. It's so difficult for them to fight these quicker fights they want to look towards, and very much dismantling this comp. They get the soul, they immediately, because of the committal from Burning Core to not just give up the soul, because you don't give up a soul like that, it immediately leads into the Baron as well. Burning Core now very quickly finding themselves in a consistent thing. And see here, Burning Core, I think, missing the mark just a little bit, because Nap getting mega and immediately they opt into the Drake fight right next to the wall. So setting up CJ perfectly for this fantastic disruption, this delayed response from Burning Core, and getting aptly punished.
It is really exceptional stuff, and it feels like DICE has been made to feel so useless in this game. We know how good he can be on stuff like the Akali, but every single time, Nema has been there to keep the carries alive. As, of course, it's CGA Burning Core. We jump out of a replay and straight into a fight, and this one not looking good for the blue side team at all. Flawless and DICE both on blinking HP bars, and CGA, with that advantage, are going to find a much easier time getting this push in the top lane down.
Yeah, Economy Baron in full swing now as they have 3 tier 2s to unlock still. Want to see how much they can get out of this, with a 4-1 it seems to be beginning here. Now, real quick to note is that Kassin did burn that Wind Cyclone right at the start of that fight there, so they're missing a key engage and disruption tool. It's almost entirely off the back now of Nat being mega and Cocoon having that demonic ascension to try and start a fight.
Yeah, but look at this now. CGA still with a minute and a half on the Baron, absolutely free to push in the top lane, and Hybrid could just go forward and look for a solo kill onto DICE.
How disgusting.
How the bloody hell do you go for that play? Ridiculous from the Crest Gaming Act AD carrion. That frees them up to just go for this push. Nap is stood in the mid lane,
Look at
but they don't seem to get,
Cocoon.
because Cocoon could just stand in the way of everybody on Burning Core. Impervious. Waiting on the wave to get there in time, but Loser rooted up in the front side, forced back to the relative safety of his fountain. CGA, one away in the game, right here, right now, as Flawless taken off the board. Ray Farkey forced to run away, but Nap will chase him down with the Hyperprox and put him to death. Crest Gaming Act in a vital matchup against Burning Core secure the dub.
Casters in their first game with Cocoon said how impressive he was. I came into this expecting the same, and I'm very satisfied with this performance. And Hybrid really just doing his job. We expect this kind of a play from this carry. We said CJ on a good game would be absolutely demolishing Burning Core, and we saw it here. Just complete dismantling of how Burning Core tried to draft themselves into, and then in turn finding successful fights and playing around objectives to very quickly secure them 2 different win conditions. Fantastic.
And it feels so strange after a game like that to hype up individual members, because it really was a team performance from Crest Gaming Act. It very much felt like they were all on the same page. Kassin doing what he does best, going for a lot of these aggressive engages, Nat following up as well. But Nema, so many times on the Tarn Kench, finding key devours to keep members of his team alive, to neuter the ability of DICE to be that assassin, to be that real carry threat. Really great stuff from this team.
Yeah, and whilst I very much want to speak to CJ's credit, I do want to talk about Burning Core's draft specifically, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more in our actual recap in just a couple of minutes. But it seems like CJ identified very early on what Burning Core were trying to do, and found a few key picks to subvert Burning Core's goals and really set themselves up for successful fights. And honestly, I don't even know if CJ played the fights immaculately. I think it was just playing the comp how they wanted to play it perfectly, and really disrupting how Burning Core were trying to play.
Identify your win conditions and also identify your loser conditions and play around those exceptionally. We are going to be jumping to a short break, but join us in a few minutes to break down how CGA took that win.
Smiles on the face of Middle Court. His team has finally picked up a win against Burning Core. And obviously we know the score. We're going to have to get the interview from Echo a little bit later. But let's talk about the game that we just saw. Burning Core CGA. Down below is the draft. And a few things that weren't what we necessarily expected. And I'm talking about that Shyvana in the jungle.
Yeah, definitely a pit that we usually see a lot more in the top side, in that top lane. And credit to Burning Core trying to be a bit more creative with their draft, keeping this sort of flex pick alive for as long as they could in terms of the draft. But I really don't feel like it worked for them. Flawless was definitely able to apply a little bit of pressure in the early stages, but a few too many times in these team fights, it felt like he was diving forward by himself and getting exploded in the front line, giving that first kill over to CGA and allowing them to play out the rest of the fights.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why we see... Oh, go on.
It is, by the way, the first Shyvana that we've seen in the jungle, in the split, by the way. Not the first Shyvana we've seen in total, but definitely the first jungle. So, yeah, Oak.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to why we see the handshake in jungle so much. I think also the reason why the Shyvana didn't work is also because we saw another thing from Burning Core, which was a fat load of mid lane bans, which did not have much impact in this draft.
Yeah, and on the other side of the draft, we got to see the Swain, which has been played by V3 a couple of times. Also, Yuzio really making that one a little bit popular for them. This time, though, Cocoon, Swain, I think it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm an unbelievable fan of this. I think not only did it so in isolation with the lane, it does not have a good matchup into Akali. I'm pretty sure in that, but into the comp that we saw from Burning Core as a whole, especially because Burning Core's comp does want to go forwards. It did a fantastic job of completely reversing that because Burning Core were on the back foot this entire game, almost entirely off the back of the fact that they're trying to play forwards into a Kench Swain, the Kench also being another factor. You get demolished. So they have to play on the back foot. It really disrupts the core goals, and that's why we saw the Shyvana picked apart so much in these fights. It really seemed like she wasn't a factor, and that limits in turn how much the rest of the characters in Burning Core can even try and impact these fights.
And it really kicked off well for the side of CGA, I would say. Because Burning Core, yeah, they picked up a couple kills in the early, but CGA with a really nice tower dive did start off the game pretty well. They showed that they were very uniform. They said they were very much in control of this game, and they played very well as a team. And let's get on to the first clip of our segment here. We have the fourth dragon fight here. CGA obviously 2-1 up towards the Drakes. And this is a bit of a choke point that works out pretty well for them.
Yeah, and I just love how eager to engage Kasina's been. But you see, this is what we're talking about with the Shyvana diving onto the backline, but there's no real support from the other members of Burning Core. And the fight ends in almost an instant, and that's just because of how much more coordinated CGA have been. And Burning Core, they try and fish for something on the back half, but they're ultimately not able to get anything significant.
Yeah, it's almost the issue with this Shyvana build in total is that it's a half and half of what you maybe envision from either this character, because the AP build that people love to play in ARAM that actually does hold a little bit of value in this kind of a game would be very good if they were trying to play more defensive. In turn, this full tank build, whilst maybe more of what we'd envision from this comp cohesively actually gets just completely nullified by the fact that nobody's able to follow up, and he gets blown up even with the tank build because of the myriad of extended team fight damage the CGA bring.
I genuinely wonder whether the better option here for Burning Core would have been to go AP poke on the Shyvana. You play poke with GP barrels and with the Shyvana as well. Then you get engaged from Kalista and Akali to follow up once people are chunked low. I feel like that's actually a bit of a jank way to play this composition, but probably could have been a bit more effective.
It definitely could have been. And as we go to the final game-ending play here, so a lot has happened. Obviously, Hextech Drake has been secured, the soul for CGA, and it kicks off so quick.
Yeah, this is CGA.
This is hybrid.
Yeah, well, I think it's CGA as a whole, actually, because Cocoon also does his job to perfection here. I think I highlighted it in game, but just look at the space he's providing for his team. This is how you effectively use your goal to end games out. Because look at this. He forces pressure out. He burns the ulti early as well as the Sonya's. And whilst he's actually not fighting here, technically, the amount of time he buys unlocks the first turret, and that in turn gives Nap the timer to get Mega, and then he gets to set up for the team to actually win the fight. Yeah, just an effective, a really good example of this mid laner finding a gold lead and then using that gold lead to be an effective threat and not a carry.
Yeah, and I think that the key thing about the way that the Swain was piloted specifically is oftentimes we see players pop the Demonic Ascension really, really late in fights, and you don't actually have the opportunity to heal up, to use all of that drain tank abilities. But Cocoon was more than happy to pop the ultimate at a drop of the hat, even when it was unnecessary a few times. But the key thing for me from CGA is that when that ultimate was used a little bit early, the majority of times they back away from the play. They recognize that, hey, without this key ultimate, we can't go for the fight. Burning Core will give you what you want for the time being, but the next time that you show up, we're going to smash your faces.
Yeah, indeed. The Demonic Ascension did rise at CGA to a win. However, the Dragon descended with its Burning Core. It was pretty rough for them indeed, but that is what it is. CGA taking another win, separating themselves from Axis, from Burning Core. We'll see, though, if Axis can pick up a win and match them. But before we go anywhere, Sith Lord Swain, what do you guys think about that one? That's
I'm
definitely
saying.
I
That's
like
what
it, I
I'm
like it,
saying.
like
it's
But the
like
thing
could
is, they
have
have
the
to be
force
careful.
pull, they could have the lightning. It's all there. It's all there in the
Yeah,
making.
it
Right,
is.
I'm
go on.
saying.
It is actually
That's
all
why.
there, and hey, the dark side of the Force allows for like healing and stuff. Yo, is
Is
Sway
that
Riot
canon
just a
anymore?
Sith Lord? Is
Riot,
that
make it
canon?
happen. Riot, make it happen. But either way, we're going to let you guys ponder that one. Maybe make some fan art over the break. But we'll be right back. We are going to be saying goodbye to Middlecore. We are saying goodbye to Oak. We are going to be bringing in Echo KO and RMC. But blessed be to the guys that were on the cast. It's been a great one. We're going to have a break and we'll come back with more action.